Do you really believe that holding on to offenses protects your heart? It's actually the opposite. They act like slow poison, eroding joy and diverting focus from what truly matters. How many times have you lost sleep, ruminating over words spoken by someone who might not even remember what they said? Is it worth giving up your peace to a memory that, deep down, only keeps you trapped in the past? How many opportunities to live more lightly have been wasted because resentment spoke louder? A heart consumed by offense leaves little room for faith, love, or even the dreams God has set aside for you. But the good news is, it doesn't have to be this way. There's a path to break free from this cycle, and it begins when you decide not to let the wound take root. What happens next is a transformation so profound that you'll surprise even yourself. Today, you'll learn to identify the invisible trap of offense, understand why it keeps knocking at your door, and above all, discover how to reject it before it becomes a prison. You're not here by chance, but because you were chosen to experience a freer, stronger, and God-guided life. If you allow it, you'll feel the weight lift from your shoulders and realize that your joy doesn't depend on what others do or say. Do you really want to remain a hostage to others' words, or would you rather live in peace? The choice is yours alone. Paul wasn't just a courageous preacher. He was also a man who knew the pain of injustice firsthand. When Alexander the coppersmith caused him great harm, it would have been natural to harbor resentment, raise his voice, or seek revenge. But instead, Paul took a deep breath and entrusted the situation to God. This act of trust shows that true strength lies not in retaliating in kind, but in recognizing that we don't need to carry a burden that isn't ours. This posture of faith teaches us that we're not always called to resolve everything with our own hands. An offense, when brought to the court of the heart, only produces internal condemnation. But when we let the just judge take up the case, we find rest. Paul knew that holding on to resentment would be like drinking poison and expecting the other person to suffer. So, he chose to release the burden and continue his mission with his eyes fixed on eternity. Often, life puts us in similar situations. Maybe someone at work takes credit for your efforts, a friend betrays your trust, or a family member disappoints you. In those moments, the human impulse is to strike back, but the path of faith points in another direction, to place in God's hands what is beyond our strength. This surrender isn't weakness, it's courage. The courage to believe that He sees everything, that nothing escapes His gaze. When you think about it, carrying offenses is like walking with stones in your pockets. Each step becomes heavier, the journey slower, and soon there's no energy left to keep going. Paul shows us that it's possible to empty our pockets, even if others' pockets remain full of stones. That's living free, not because the world stopped being unjust, but because we choose not to be imprisoned by what we can't control. And that's where the beauty of faith lies, trusting when everything in us screams to retaliate. Paul knew his mission was bigger than any momentary wound. He didn't let resentment define his identity, but rather his faith in Christ. That's the secret that turns victims into victors. To surrender the offense not to memory, but to the altar, trusting that God will bring justice in His time. This lesson isn't just a biblical story, it's a daily call. The world is still full of offenses, but each of us can choose to live dragging chains or to walk lightly, trusting there's a greater purpose. And so, the heart opens to the next choice we face. What to do when an offense hits us head-on? Imagine sitting at a table, tasting a dish, and finding it too bitter to swallow. Would you have the courage to swallow it? Of course not. Similarly, an offense comes like spoiled food. We can swallow it and get sick, or spit it out before it poisons us. This simple metaphor reveals a profound spiritual truth. We don't need to carry what harms us. The choice is always before us. At work, for example, you might not be invited to an important meeting. Your heart whispers, swallow it, feel rejected, prove you're not valued. But faith reminds you, don't accept that dish. Rejecting the offense is like closing the door to a storm before it destroys everything inside. It's acting with wisdom, choosing to preserve peace instead of feeding resentments that lead nowhere. Of course, the initial impulse is to justify yourself, show there was a mistake, demand explanations. But does that really bring healing? Or does it just keep the flame of bitterness alive? Swallowing the offense is accepting imprisonment by something that has no real power over you. Spitting it out is an act of freedom, a sign of spiritual maturity. It's looking forward and remembering that your identity doesn't depend on people's approval, but on the God who chose you. Curiously, this seemingly small decision shapes our entire future. Those who hold on to offenses become more distrustful, closed off, and less willing to love. But those who reject them carry a lightness in their gaze, the ease of someone who owes nothing to anyone, who's learned to smile even after hearing harsh words. That's the reflection of living in faith, not letting a moment of pain define an entire life. And don't think rejecting an offense means denying reality. It's not about pretending nothing happened, but choosing not to let it dictate your heart's course. Just as spitting out spoiled food doesn't erase the initial bitter taste, but prevents it from poisoning your body, rejecting resentment protects your soul from sickness. That's emotionally intelligent faith. In the end, every offense is a disguised opportunity, an invitation to prove whether we'll be hostages to resentment or free by choice. A heart that learns to spit out what doesn't serve is already prepared to grasp a deeper secret: how Jesus escaped the greatest traps without ever losing sight of who he truly was. There's something fascinating about how Jesus handled extreme pressure. When crowds rose against him, trying to stone or ensnare him, Scripture says he simply passed through the midst of the people and went on his way. This wasn't cowardice, it was wisdom. He didn't let himself be caught in useless arguments or venomous words because he knew his mission was greater than proving a point. How often are we surrounded by traps disguised as comments? Someone provokes us, pokes at a wound, and the impulse is to respond in kind. But Jesus shows another path. Don't engage in the fight. Escaping in this case is a decision of maturity. He understood that getting caught up would waste precious time better spent on those open to receiving. It's inspiring to realize that fleeing a trap isn't weakness, it's focus. It's like an athlete who, instead of stopping to argue with critics in the stands, keeps running toward the finish line. Jesus teaches us to value our energy, reserving it for the purpose God gave us. That's how we overcome the temptation to prove something to those who'll never acknowledge it. In practical terms, this might mean not replying to a provocative message, avoiding endless debates on social media, or even staying silent in the face of someone trying to stir conflict. Escaping isn't running from the problem. It's choosing not to be ensnared by it. It's freeing yourself before getting entangled in a discussion that adds nothing to your faith or heart, and more. When Jesus passed through the crowd, he not only avoided the trap but kept his dignity intact. He didn't stoop to the level of accusations because he knew who he was. That's the secret to not falling, holding firm to your identity in the God who chose you. When you remember this, traps lose their power because you don't need to prove anything to those trying to bring you down. This perspective makes it clear, true victory isn't winning an argument, but not losing peace. Those who learn to escape like Jesus make room for an even greater understanding. The freedom to choose between living bound by offenses or walking lightly without carrying unnecessary burdens. Every day, we face a silent choice. Will we let offenses dictate our emotions, or will we choose to live free? No one can force us to carry resentment. It only happens when we give permission. The heart must decide whether it will be a home for peace or a storage place for grudges. This choice, though seemingly small, shapes our entire story. Living bound by offense is like being in a cell with an open door, but not realizing you can step out. Many spend years nurturing resentment over situations long past. Meanwhile, they miss opportunities to experience the abundant life God desires. The prison is only real for those who insist on staying in it. But there's also the freedom of those who choose to forgive and move forward. These people aren't naive, but aware. They understand that holding on to resentment only steals energy, health, and even weakens faith. When you choose to live lightly, the smile returns to your face, your mind opens to new possibilities, and your heart fills with hope. It's a gift only those who decide can receive. Of course, it's not easy. It's a process that requires discipline, prayer, and often faith to believe God is handling what we can't resolve. Freedom begins with a simple but firm decision, not letting words or actions define who you are. It's an act of courage saying to yourself, I won't be a hostage to anything that doesn't come from God. The most incredible part is realizing how this decision impacts other areas of life. A person free from offense relates better, has more energy for their projects, and radiates confidence. Problems don't disappear, but they stop being invisible chains. It's like walking barefoot on the sand, feeling the breeze, without weight on your shoulders. That's the lightness of knowing to whom you belong. In the end, the question echoes simply. Would you rather spend your life bound to bitter memories or live as a chosen one, with faith and joy in your heart? The key has always been in your hands. And by opening that door, everything changes, because God not only delivers from offense, but leads to a full, purpose-driven life. It's impossible to navigate today's world without encountering sharp words or critical comments. Offenses are everywhere, at the dinner table, in work meetings, or even in a simple scroll through social media. Like a shadow that insists on following us, it appears when we least expect, trying to steal the lightness of our day. No matter the place, provocation seems always ready to find us. Getting caught up in these provocations is like taking the bait. A snide post or a misinterpreted phrase can become an emotional prison. And the worst part is we spend hours, sometimes days, ruminating over something that has no real power over our life's direction. It's like winding a broken clock. The hands move, but time doesn't progress. The heart thus gets stuck in a pointless loop. Curiously, many of us carry offenses like war trophies. Those who live in this dynamic forget that faith calls us to something far greater, to focus on what builds up, not what tears down. A practical example is how we react on social media. A single negative comment can overshadow hundreds of compliments. Instead of valuing those who recognize our efforts, we get stuck on the one trying to diminish us. If we apply the wisdom of not taking the bait, we start investing our energy in what truly matters, creating, loving, sharing, and growing. That's the choice of someone who knows they're a child of God, not a slave to others' approval. The omnipresence of offense also reveals how vulnerable we are when we don't guard our hearts. It's like walking without an umbrella on a rainy day. It's not a matter of if we'll get wet, but when. So the wise posture is to prepare beforehand, strengthening the mind and soul to not give power to what doesn't deserve it. Faith, in this sense, acts as invisible armor against verbal arrows. If we recognize that offense is everywhere, we must also see that the trap is bigger than it seems. Understanding the nature of this trap is key to not falling into it repeatedly, because only when we see the trick do we stop getting caught. This brings us to reflect on its true origin and purpose. Few people know, but the word offense has roots in ancient Greek, literally meaning bait. The imagery is powerful, like a piece of food placed in a trap to lure and capture animals. The same happens to us. When we take the bait of offense, we get trapped in a cycle of resentment. It's a clever but cruel game that ensnares those who don't see the trap. When we fall for this trick, our minds fill with repetitive thoughts. The heart becomes burdened, as if a constant cloud hovers over the day. This trap doesn't just steal peace, but also the time and energy that could be used to build something good. It's curious how we often treat offense as something inevitable, almost natural, when in fact we have the power to reject it. The key is to decide quickly. The sooner we let go of the weight, the freer we become. This doesn't mean ignoring injustices, but choosing not to let them control our emotions. It's the difference between recognizing the trap and staying caught in it. Think of someone who chooses not to engage in unproductive debates. That person isn't fleeing. They're freeing themselves. It's like seeing bait on the ground and simply walking past without giving in to the urge to grab it. This behavior is wisdom in action, a practical form of faith that protects the heart from invisible chains. When we accept the trap, we lose clarity. We start making decisions driven by resentment, not purpose. But when we reject it, we make room for God to guide our lives with freedom and peace. It's like cleaning a foggy lens. Suddenly, We see the world with more color and meaning. Recognizing offense as a trap is the first step to acting differently, but there's still an essential question. What happens when this stain starts to settle in our hearts, becoming harder to remove? Anyone who's tried to clean a stain knows, if you act quickly, the solution is simple, but if you delay, the dirt seeps into the fibers and seems impossible to remove. That's exactly how offense works in the heart. When left there too long, it sinks in, taking up space meant for peace and joy. The result is an invisible weight no one sees, but the person feels in every breath. An offense is like a stain on a carpet. Wisdom lies in not letting resentment take hold. Every minute spent feeding the memory of a harsh word or injustice marks the heart further. It's like spilling coffee on a white rug. The longer you wait to clean, the harder it is to restore its original beauty. The lesson is clear. Act fast. Don't give the offense time to take root. Instead of letting your mind replay the episode, pray immediately, surrender it to God, take a deep breath, and shift your thoughts to something constructive. You might even write it down on paper and throw it away as a symbol of not letting it settle in you. These are simple actions that act like a stain remover, preventing the offense from becoming permanent. The problem is that many prefer to live with the dirt, like covering a stained carpet with furniture. It seems to solve the issue, but underneath the stain remains, eroding the beauty of the space. The same happens with the heart. We can pretend, smile on the outside, but inside the wound grows, waiting to overflow in bursts of anger or sadness. The Bible reminds us to guard the heart, for from it flow the springs of life. If an offense is dealt with quickly, the heart stays clean and light. But if we let resentment settle, every new pain finds fertile ground to multiply. It's as if a single dark drop could taint an entire crystal-clear spring. This awareness opens our eyes. It's not enough to recognize the stain. We must choose not to let it stay. And in that choice lies another deeper lesson, the spiritual value of ignoring certain provocations, not as avoidance but as proof of wisdom. The biblical wisdom in Proverbs 19:11 offers a precious key. A person's glory is in overlooking an offense. Ignoring isn't being naive, it's being mature enough not to be dragged down by provocations that have no real power over our identity. This is a lesson that transforms relationships, entire days, and even the course of a life. When someone chooses to overlook an offense, they're saying clearly, "I won't give your words power over my heart." It's like hearing a door slam shut and not running to check who closed it. Silence, in this case, isn't weakness, but armor. Those who act this way preserve peace and prevent a spark from turning into an emotional wildfire. Overlooking an offense is an act of glory, not carelessness. The glory lies in maintaining serenity when everything around screams for a reaction. Think of a heated argument. The one who stays silent is often seen as weaker, but in truth, they're the strongest because they have self-control. This self-control is a sign of spiritual and emotional maturity. In practice, you can train this behavior in simple situations. When faced with unfair criticism, instead of responding immediately, breathe and give yourself time to decide if it's worth reacting. Most times, you'll see the response isn't necessary. Ignoring is like flushing a dirty thought. It stops circulating in your mind and makes room for something better. The result of this choice is liberating. Those who learn to overlook offenses live lighter, sleep better, smile more, and radiate confidence. Instead of carrying the weight of every word received, they flow with life in peace. This doesn't mean becoming insensitive, but wise enough not to let every stone in the path become a wall. And when we grasp the value of this attitude, it becomes clear that we have a perfect model for responding to offenses. Jesus Christ, who endured insults and persecution without losing focus. His example sheds even more light on what it means to be free inside, no matter what happens outside. No life was as exposed to offenses as Jesus. He was unjustly accused, betrayed by close friends, publicly insulted, and even mocked while suffering on the cross. Yet, he didn't let himself be trapped by the words or actions meant to hurt him. His response was astonishing. Silence at times, firmness at others, but always complete trust in God, the just judge. This is the standard that changes how we face our own pains. What's striking is that Jesus didn't waste energy trying to prove his innocence to those with hardened hearts. He knew his life's value didn't depend on human approval, but on the mission given by the Father. How often do we, in contrast, waste time trying to convince those who will never understand us? The lesson is clear. You don't need to win every argument to live in peace. Following this example requires faith. Because, humanly speaking, the instinct is to defend, justify, or even counterattack. But Jesus shows a higher path: entrust the cause to God's hands. This isn't passivity, it's spiritual intelligence. It's like saying, I won't be a hostage to your words because I trust the truth will always prevail. And that sets you free. A practical exercise is to choose silence when someone tries to provoke you. This isn't silence out of fear, but a strategic silence. It's the same silence Jesus kept before Pilate, not for lack of arguments, but because he knew nothing would derail his mission. Next time you feel the urge to retaliate, ask yourself, will this response bring me closer to my purpose, or just feed the offense? Looking at Christ, we see he didn't just endure offenses, he transformed pain into redemption. What seemed like defeat became eternal victory. This shows us that the wounds of offense can become testimonies of faith, as long as we don't let resentment reign. Strength isn't in avoiding wounds, but in not letting them define who we are. When we respond like Jesus, we stop being puppets of others' words. Offenses lose their power to control us, and we live as chosen ones, guided by faith in God, with hearts free to fulfill our purpose. And here we understand, no prison is stronger than an offense, but no freedom is greater than overcoming it through love. To show you've made it this far, comment below this video with the keyword freedom. Share this content with someone who also needs a reminder that offense shouldn't rule their heart. And tell me, what's the biggest offense you've overcome with faith in God? Your story could inspire others. Now click the video that appears on the screen and take the next step to know yourself better and live as a true chosen one.